Oh, there she is. There she is. There she is.
Hello. It is
Hello,
so good to
Peppermint. How are
see
you?
you.
Lovely to see you as well. You look. Is it possible that you could be more beautiful?
No. It's not, I can't, it can't be.
Let me say this. First of all, I'm so happy that you're joining us, and I'm so glad that we're going to be talking about a little radical joy. Um, I've spent this whole week immersing myself in what I call the world of peppermint. And I'm not talking peppermint candy or peppermint patties. I'm
Which
talking
are good,
about,
which are also good.
which are very good, but I'm really talking about the incomparable, the iconic peppermint. Peppermint, I'm going to begin this by sharing with our audience why we are here. Every June, our nation observes Juneteenth and Pride Month. Both are rooted in the enduring pursuit of freedom, the right to live authentically, to be treated with dignity, and to be recognized as full participants in the promise of this nation. That is what we're here to do, but we're going to expand that conversation by talking about a little radical joy. This Before we begin, I just want to tell the people that are watching a little bit about you and what you have done. I mean, it's just going to be a very short introduction to your career. Now, Peppermint, you've worked on Broadway. You've starred in film and television. You are a drag performer. You are an ACLU activist, but you are probably best known as the runner up in season 9 of RuPaul's Drag Race. But I, in particular, love you in Survival of the Thickest. I love that show on Netflix, and I have to fan out for a quick moment because I saw you in Head Over Heels, and I'm a huge Go-Go fan, and you were extraordinary. So please welcome everyone, Peppermint, to this conversation about radical joy.
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And hello, everyone. Hi, I'm really happy to be here with you, of course, and with the Museum of Broadway, which I absolutely love and adore. I just love how we finally have a place where we can visit, learn about, but then also keep a sort of visual record of the legacy of Broadway and professional theater in New York City and the impact. And I'm really grateful for all of the work that the that folks at the museum have done to shine a light on and highlight different people from different communities that aren't usually focused on, especially in terms of their contributions to Broadway, because there's a lot of people who contribute to Broadway shows, productions, creation of Broadway shows, and creation of theater in general, who don't get their shine. So thank you so much for Museum of Broadway for having this conversation. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. I love Survival of the Thickest, and I'll just go right ahead and say it. We just dropped season 2, and I'm super excited about it. I think it's great. And the actor, the wonderful actor who plays my husband, asked me to tell you hello, Dan Amboy, who said he absolutely adores you and loves you
Oh,
so much. Uh,
oh, Dan's amazing. Look, I saw your wedding on the show. Look, first of all, you are a beautiful bride, and the kiss between the two of you, I may be telling too much, but that kiss was memorable, extremely memorable.
Yay!
Yes.
Did it.
Yes, yeah, and I know we're here to talk about the American theater, but I just want to talk a little bit more about Survival of the Thickest. I watched the show, and what I love about it is you talk about diversity in storytelling. This is a show that is so unique in so many ways. Um, I thought I was watching a show that was really going to be about the journey of what's the comedian's name? That's the
Uh, the
Michelle.
the actor and creator Michelle Buteau,
Yes,
but the
yeah,
character's name is Mavis.
yes. But Mavis's journey and her friends, their friends are very diverse. What I love is you've got she has one straight friend, cisgender friend.
Uh-huh.
You get his storyline, and he's going through his journey. You also get Tasha Smith, who is now a lesbian woman, or she's bisexual, however you want to look at it. Then I love the fact that Mavis is going through her trials and tribulations, trying to find a man, trying to find love, and to find a career. But then we're infused with these amazingly colorful people who are from every walk of life, and they do it so unapologetically and so easily. And it's such a joy to watch it, such a joy to watch you as Peppermint, which the character shares your name, but to see her journey, it's been fantastic. So, what was it like being a part of that show, and what was the how did you get that job? How did that come to be?
It's I actually auditioned. My agent messaged me and said, "Hey, we have this audition." Kind of loosely described it, and I said, "Oh yeah, that sounds good. I'll take a look." And then before they sent any of the materials for me to like prepare my audition tape, they said, "We got to warn you, the character's name is Peppermint, and they're a black drag queen who's also a trans woman who lives in Harlem." And I was like, "Wait a minute now, that's all." What did they do they have to return their library book that they took out? Like it's the I'm like, it is me. And I was like, well, what happens if I don't get the part? Who's going to play Pepper? But then obviously I got a chance to talk to. That was the first thing I asked Michelle. I was like, what's going on? And she's like, girl, I wanted to make sure that you could act. It's okay. And so that, it's wonderful to work on that show. You mentioned the diversity, and that's something that the creators of the show, the showrunners, Danielle and Michelle, who are the creators of the show, said that they wanted to have a real look at New York, because New York is a lot of things, a lot of people, but for many people it is definitely diverse, whether
Hmm.
that's in friend group or just when people you see walking down the street. And they wanted to make sure that that was, I mean, look, you spend time watching some of the other classic and iconic New York City sitcoms, Friends and Sex and the City, and many of us will find a moment or two, at least one moment during the run of those shows where we're like, wait a minute, why is there no, like you ask that
Yeah.
question,
Hmm.
like that, what part of New York is that? And I think Michelle wanted to make sure that it looked like her New York.
Yeah.
She is a New Yorker through and through, from New Jersey, by way of New
Yeah.
Jersey, as is
Hmm.
Tasha. And wanted to make sure that it felt very real, and that meant people of all colors, all body types, all sexualities, and everything in between. And so that is not only in the story, what we see on TV, but it's also in the writing of the show and in behind the scenes. And I think it takes that for it to feel authentic. And they do a great job, and I'm really grateful. They just announced that we were picked up for the third and final season by Netflix, and so we start working on
Yeah.
that later on in the year.
I can't wait. I really cannot wait. Now, one thing that I think is different, the difference between the character you play on the Netflix series and you in real life is you are an extraordinary advocate for gender affirming rights. I think they hint at that on the series, but not in the way that you are extremely present in your real life. Can you talk about how does your art and your advocacy, how do they merge, and when did they start to merge?
I professionally, they've been. It's always a struggle because there's lots of times where we are caught. I'll speak for myself, where I'm faced with the question of, do I speak out on this because I want to, and I have should I speak out on this? When do I speak out on this, and what impact will it have to the cause overall, to people outside of me, and then also to my ability to continue to speak out in the future, and to earn a living. I mean, I hope people know, it shouldn't come as a surprise that activism and advocacy does not really pay. And so, I mean, financially. And
Yeah.
there are some people who are professional activists or advocates who make a living, but many of us don't. You know, I'd say most of the people who are speaking out because they see an injustice are just speaking out because they see an injustice, and that's free, you know.
Yeah.
And so I choose to, I want to, and I would like to balance that with being able to work as a professional entertainer in film, television, and in theater as long as I can. And the
Hmm.
two things don't have to go hand in hand, but I'll tell you, and I'm sure that lots of people who are of marginalized communities can identify with this. There have been many times where I've wanted to go out for a Broadway show, a role in this or that. And I was basically all but told, whatever this is doesn't go with that role, you know,
Mm.
and knowing that they're not looking for a trans woman to play, you know, the lead in such and such and so and so. And so they're not looking for a Black person to play the this and that. I mean, that's a little bit different now. We've come a little further in terms of like non-traditional casting. But, you know, they meaning the producers of film and television and professional theater, Broadway, are, you know, sometimes I think they opt to go sometimes the safest option and the more money-making option is the least risky, but also the least diverse and sometimes the least authentic option.
Yeah.
And I have to make that choice every time. And sometimes that choice is very obvious which ones they choose. And I didn't have the opportunity to merge the two for the longest time. Then I'd say, you know, within the last 5 or 10 years after the transgender tipping point, which was marked by Laverne Cox's historic Emmy nomination and appearance and starring role in Orange is the New Black, and then her appearance on the cover of Time magazine, which was also obviously historic,
Hmm.
started to mark a change in how people dealt with and talked about LGBT people, but trans people specifically. And so we saw more opportunities to not only feature trans people, but the conversation really started to change. Also, thanks again to a really poignant conversation and interview that Laverne had alongside Katie Couric and Carmen Carrera, saying that, listen, as trans people, we don't want to talk about our genitalia every time we get on to an interview. We don't want to talk about, I'm here to talk about a TV show, not what surgeries I've had. And that honestly, people may not remember this, but that is honestly, you could have been elected to the presidency of the United States as the first trans woman, and they would have said, well, what's between your legs? Like that's
Yeah.
honestly where they were.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so thanks to them, they were able to change that conversation. And Laverne, I remember Laverne saying, if we're talking about that, we're not talking about the lived experiences of trans people. And that ushered in an opportunity to talk about the types of struggles that people in our community are still facing, which is obviously way more important and honestly more interesting than what surgery you have had. Who cares? And so thanks to that moment, I was finally able to see that there were people in Broadway and television and film, you know, producers of projects and shows and things that wanted to have a Black trans person or a non-binary person or a person with this experience. And they were starting to write that into their original material. And because of that, I'm able to have those two. I know it's a long version of the answer, but
Oh, no,
because
no.
of
You're
that,
good.
I'm able to put those two things together. And I'm grateful, especially post 2020, where there may not be people currently trying to book this type of conversation, but now I know that it's possible. And so I want to play roles that both showcase whatever talent I may have, but also talk about the real experiences that we're going through in the trans community. And that's I'm grateful that I've been able to do that. And there's some
Yeah.
great work coming down the pike that in Broadway that will be doing that. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And you mentioned quite a few things that I want to comment on. First of all, a shout out to Laverne Cox because we're both from Alabama. So
Hey,
Alabama's in the house. Yes, yes. And I think she is an amazing advocate not only for the Black community, but also for the trans community, for the LGBTQ IA plus community. I mean, just for humanity, because at the end of the day, what we want to acknowledge is the fact that we all have the right to belong and to be and to live authentically. And I agree with you. What we do in our bedrooms and what our genitalia may look like or not look like, that's not part of the conversation. The conversation is how do we all move forward and how do we treat each other with dignity and kindness, and respect. So I admire you for all the work that you do. You were recently acknowledged by the Reach LA, and you were given the Trans Vanguard Award. Now, your speech, I listened to your speech on social media, and I noticed that you had a comment that said you thought you sounded angry, but I didn't hear any anger in your voice. I heard I heard frustration. I heard inspiration. I heard we have a lot of more work to do, and I heard gratitude. But tell me, why did you think that you felt that it sounded a bit angry?
well, I can't judge it. That's not my final judgment necessarily, but that was sort of my response to the temperature of my body as I was writing and delivering that speech.
Hmm.
Because I usually and in the past, because those days are gone, I would focus on let's just be nice and let's just say something that'll make everybody feel loved, and that's it. And still saying what we want, but putting it in a going above and beyond to be extremely hopeful in just naming what we would like for the community, but not really naming or acknowledging what is going on. And that's how I had sort of conducted many of the speeches and conversations that I've had in the past. And sometimes there's room for that. But we were coming off of, that was back in February or March, and that speech. And, we were well into, after January 20th, on the damn daily news headlines that are like, yeah, not this. What? Now who's lost what? Now who's getting taken?
Right.
Like, it is
Hmm.
too much. And so that girl is the girl of the past. Now we need to be real and really need to talk about what's going on, what the problems are, and what I really want to do, especially with regards to the LGBTQ plus community, is I want to do two things. In general, it's important that we name what's happening to us. We had some great but very temporary news for the trans community with regards to identification a couple of days ago by a lower court, which means it's going to go to the higher courts, and then it could change like next week. So we can, fingers crossed.
Hmm.
But the other piece is we were dealt two very devastating blows to the LGBTQIA plus community, but to the trans community specifically with regards to gender affirming care, a Supreme Court decision yesterday, and then also news that this current administration is going to shut down the Trevor Project's important life-saving phone hotline for the work that they do for LGBTQIA plus youth. And so I don't have time to be just sweet anymore. We have to be real about this because we're seeing these things, the resources, the funding for these resources being stripped away. And it's obviously not just our community. So the other thing that I wanted to mention is the importance of coalition. The importance that the LGBTQIA people that we connect not only with each other within the community and find new ways to constantly do that, then also coalition with the working class, coalition with people who, I don't know who you sleep with, what religion you are, or what anything is. All I know is you and I both are neighbors, and we both need food, we both need water, we both need shelter,
Mm-hmm.
we both need the ability to hold a job or whatever we're going to do. We need the ability to do these types of things and have without being persecuted. And I know that if they knock on your door and take away your apartment or your ability to do this or that or drag you out, I'm your next door neighbor. I'm next. And so we have to build a coalition in terms of that. And then what I'll say on Juneteenth, on this day, is I know this was not on the question, but I'm going to say
Go
it.
ahead.
I remember hearing so long, especially with regards to the Black community and the gay community, what we would call the gay community just 10, 20 years ago, that like there were people, heterosexual people in the Black community who felt for some reason that the gay issues, LGBTQI issues, was something that was not a part of, inherently a part of the Black experience. That is
Mm-hmm.
something that was brought to us by white folks. That's what I've heard people say. I don't agree with that. And while I can understand that there are access to freedom of expression, gendered expression, sexuality, that many white people in America have been able to enjoy, like without necessarily being experiencing the same type of blowback that you might experience within the Black community. I can acknowledge there's a different experience that LGBT folks who are Black and white and different races experience. However, queerness is a part of the Black experience. Queerness was with us on the continent of Africa, in the motherland.
Yeah.
Queerness came over with us. That conversation about queerness not being inherently Black is a part of the Christian patriarchal conversation that was put on us when we were thrust into chattel slavery. And so I'm not saying that Black people are all gay. I'm saying
Right.
queerness and every single part of living authentically through humanity has been with us since the beginning of time. And so on Juneteenth, when I'm reminded that our rights are being stripped away today, and that, yes, we live in a free country, because people say, oh, we live in a free country, so nothing's wrong. I hear people say that, trying to gaslight us. No, we're seeing, the attacking of, accurate Black history in schools being stripped away. We're seeing LGBT rights being stripped away. We're seeing citizenship rights being challenged, first with immigration, but then we're also seeing them kind of try to chip away at the 14th Amendment, which grants us the ability to have, that is the key between the 13th and 14th Amendment. We're talking about Juneteenth. That is what meant that we were not only citizens, but humans.
Yes.
So that is what we have to talk about, and that's being chipped away today. I'm preaching, but that's all what I want to say about it.
Oh, no, no. I wanted to say amen several times, but I didn't want to distract you in any way. Um, you made a lot of in important comments that I want to go back and touch on. Um, so in terms of us moving forward as a collective community, a lot of people will say that right now, what is she talking about? Right now, Broadway is very diverse. You had Cynthia Erivo hosting the Tonys. You've got Jinx coming she's in Pirates of Penzance, about to go into Old Mary. You've got Old Mary being nominated for a Pulitzer and then the star winning. You've got Angelica Ross in Chicago. You've got all these great milestones and people saying, isn't that enough? Aren't you satisfied? So can you speak to how you feel about this moment? Is it enough? Are you satisfied? Should there be more? And what should that be?
I guess, I mean, when we're talking about like casting and, okay, so I do want to say anybody who says that has some part of their identity that they feel uh, proud about. And they could probably understand that nobody can do it like your community can do it. Meaning, you know, you could tell me your story, and if I've never been to your house, never heard you talk, never visited with you, but I get your story, and I'm going to go make a movie about your life, you probably wouldn't trust me to do that. And so understanding that having people who know the experience of whatever the story is going to be in the room, in the writer's room, in the director's room, in the creators, behind the scenes, part of the production team, really knowing what is in the ingredients so they can inform that. And because we've all seen, I don't care who you are, whether it's Broadway or TV, we've all seen really bad imitations of something that's supposed to be good and it ain't done right. I
Yeah.
don't care what it is. I don't care if it's identity or like, you know, I was supposed to be a musical in a movie, and you're like, well, honey, she's obviously not really tap dancing. She clearly doesn't know how. I don't care what it is. We've all seen that. So even if you're not a black person or a trans person or this, but that, if you're a dancer and you're a Broadway performer, and you know that they can't do it the way that a person who really has lived it can do it. And so if you can understand that, then you can understand where we're coming from. And is it good enough for me to say, well, there was a woman in a movie once? Or do we constantly need to have that conversation? Yes, a milestone is a milestone, but then in a few weeks, it's just a day, a blip in history. And half
Mm-hmm.
y'all, myself included, are not very well on history, especially that
Yeah.
they're trying to rip pages out of the book. So either we all need to become history buffs and really know our history, which we don't. We've already failed because we're
Yeah.
repeating it now. Or we keep making history. We keep doing it every time. And why does it need to be the status quo is just one of y'all? Why does it need to be everybody's just going to be white and straight and we'll have one Asian person, one disabled person, one black person, and one queer person in it? That's it. Why does it have to be that? When you walk down the street in a city like New York, we're talking about New York and professional theater. When we're walking down the street and you see who's out on the street, or you see these stories, you see people of all different types. So why can't it at least reflect that? That's like bare minimum, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But the real tea
Tell me the
is
real
that
tea.
the ones who you're like, aren't you satisfied? Hey, we are the ones who are creating the memes. We are the ones who are giving you we are the ones who, if we're not on camera, we are in the makeup room making your favorite star look good because, honey, she don't know how to put that wig on. We are the ones
Mm-hmm.
who are in, some of us in that writer's room. And when I say us, I don't necessarily mean black trans women because we're not, but other people who are part of the queer community, specifically what I'm talking about now, who are helping create. And so the diversity, and we know that having a person of color or a person who's disabled or a person who's queer or trans make a headline, that's recent. That's recent.
Mm-hmm.
The stories of us, honey, you've been doing our stories since y'all figured out what a story was. You can go back in time. Dog Day Afternoon, I talked about it in the thing. You can find stories of a trans person, a black person. They were doing our stories as black folks without us in it. That was minstrel shows. That was them putting on blackface. So they like the story. Let's not get it twisted. They want to hear about it. They just don't want us to tell it. And
Yes.
so, no, it's not enough to have one of us last year, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, bring us into the fold so that we're a part of the fabric of it. It's going to make it so much better. And like Cleo the cat says down here, it's long overdue. So anything we have now, we need to make up lost time for. You know, that's it.
I adore you. I adore you. And I love the fact that you're very shy. You just hold back so much. You know what I mean? But but let me ask you this. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and you know, I'm a person of a certain age. We're challenged with pronouns, you know, and we're also challenged with this ever evolving world. Um, can you? This is for a friend of mine who, when I told him I was interviewing you, And I said, she is identifies as a trans woman, but she's also a drag performer. He said to me, how is that possible? So, will you explain for my friend how that is possible to be one and the same, embodied in the same person?
Absolutely. I think the simplest way is we've seen drag queens who like glitz and glitter and they glue on their this and that. And we also know that Broadway's Cher likes glitz and glitter and glues on a. We know Cher's wearing a wig. I'm sorry. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
hey, hey.
Yeah.
Cher's wearing a wig. Okay, let's be real. And she probably, if you had to go through her kit, she probably has the same tape and tuck in and hit this and pull in and snatch in that drag queens have. It's Cher does a heightened. Now Cher is not going into the laundromat. Look, she might, and that'd be fierce if she does. But I don't think she goes to the laundromat. I don't know if she goes to the laundromat, but if she did, she's not wearing that glitzy, glamorous thing to the laundromat.
Right.
That's her drag. That is an
Mm-hmm.
elevated look for Cher. That's her diva glam. And so
Mm-hmm.
drag, for many people, everybody doesn't have the same style of drag, but it is a heightened level of diva and glamness. You know, Cher is got the longer hair and the longer nails and the longer gown and all this going on when she gets on stage. Same thing for drag. Anybody can do that. A man can do that. A woman can do that. We see that now. We can put two drag queens next to each other, and it might take you a couple minutes. We can put a Cher impersonator, the best Cher impersonator, hello, Chad Michaels, and there's others. I don't want to call
Yes.
any particular name. We can take the best Cher impersonator and put them in the same gown next to Cher. And you might take a minute to figure out who's who because they're both doing drag.
Right.
However, how they identify, who they sleep with, how they feel about themselves when they go to the laundromat without that on is whether if they're a trans person, that's their gender, that's their sexuality. Now, my gender expression and my gender and my experience, my life experience does have something to do with what color of dress I want to wear or what I do or how I behave on stage, but it's not one and the same. And I think because people, and they are closely related because drag, the whole story of drag is a performance of playing with or switching gender and gender expression on stage. Transness is about dealing with gender and incongruence of gender, needing to express something about your gender that you may not have felt free to do and making a few decisions maybe about that, whether it's medically or even just socially. But that's not on stage. So the difference is one happens on stage and one doesn't. Now, I do both because I can be on stage and off stage. I'm not in drag right now. If I were in drag, we would know it. My hair would be bigger. It might not even be a natural color. I'd have on way too much glitter and sequins, and things would be very long and all that stuff. You know, and I know for some people it can be confusing, but that's all they really need to know, I think.
Yeah, that's you. I think you explained it perfectly. So I have another question for you. What is your idea of a perfect life?
Honestly, you know, if you'd asked me that, if we talked about this and I had to answer this question, which I have thought this question of myself like 5 or 10 years ago, the answer might be different. It's the same, but it might be a little bit different. You know, I want to just be content with whatever's going on, which isn't the clearest answer, but I want to be content with my financial situation. I want to be safe and healthy and have a roof over my head. And I want the people around me, including my family, to be safe and have the same things. And that's what I would like. In spite of this or that, I just want to have food and a place and I'm okay and everybody's all right. I think today, it's that same thing. Of course, I want those things, but it is heightened. It's changed for the worse, I guess. I want to be able to have healthcare and an ID that matches who I am without my government coming to snatch that away, which they're currently literally just did it yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so It has changed because I'm feeling a certain amount of violence from the state, from our government, that I don't remember feeling. I don't remember feeling. I know we've experienced levels of violence, obviously, from the state historically, but I don't remember that feeling in our lifetime. And I foolishly, maybe not foolishly, I optimistically said to myself maybe 10 years ago, wow, things are really progressing. It is going to be perfect. Everybody's going to have what they need, and we're going to be great, and there's nothing to say. And I'm realizing that whether we're looking inside of our country, seeing what's happening now, or outside of the borders of our country, in the connection that our country has to people losing access to resources and land and their livelihood and their lives is connected to our country, unfortunately. And so if that's going on, it's going to make what we have here also unstable because those two things are connected. That's a different conversation, but I realize that just wanting to have a this or that, it's a good goal, but that takes constant work, you know.
Yeah, but what I love about your comments is that you're humanizing yourself. You're saying that I am just as human as anybody else. I want the basics. I want to live my life with dignity, authentically. I want to know that I can go to the grocery store without being accosted. I want to live safely. I want to, you know, I don't want to use the term American dream because I just think that that is
Shattered
so,
before our eyes.
yeah, in the sense that we think of the American dream, I just don't think it's attainable for everyone. But there are certain rights that are the foundations of this country that everyone should share in. And just because you see the world differently or you think differently does not mean that you're not entitled to the same um, 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 choices that everyone else has, or same thing. So my next question for you is, what are you obsessed with these days?
Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with the movie Sinners. And
Yes.
it's not just because it's a good movie. It's a great movie. But I'm obsessed with a piece of culture, art in culture that really we were just talking about like authenticity in the creation of and authenticity through storytelling. I mean, look, it's a spoiler alert. It's a horror movie. There's vampires in it, right? So like, there's
Hmm.
some things about it that aren't really like exactly true to life necessarily. But even in creating that, they went above and beyond. I've watched many horror movies, and a lot of horror movies, you have to have a suspension of disbelief. You're going to anyway. You know, if you're watching zombies or monsters come out, you're like, okay, that's not real. So I'm also not going to question how did they get in the car so fast. I'm not going to question, well, she wouldn't really be living there. I'm just going to be like, none of this makes sense, so I'm gonna go with it. But they didn't ask us to do that with this movie. It's a brilliant movie and a great example of um, paying attention to every detail with regards to the different cultures that contributed to American history in the Mississippi Delta, which is where the movie takes place at the time. The Choctaw Indians and Native Americans, the Irish people who had been immigrated here and were sharecrop at one point were, you know, indentured servants, I guess, sharecroppers, and then, you know, how they were able to sort of assimilate. Obviously, the Black experience with you know, former enslaved into sharecropping, the Chinese immigrant experience, and what part they had. And they just paid attention to so many details that taught me so much. And so that's what I'm obsessed with right now, is learning about
Hmm.
American history and being able to connect it to a piece of like a movie that comes out and it feel really authentic. And I'm just amazed by that.
Yeah, yeah. Now, my next question is, what never fails to make you emotional? Now, for me, one of my favorite movies is Imitation of Life. And you know that scene where Sarah Jane comes into the funeral and she runs in, she goes, "Mama, mama, mama." And she's saying, "I'm sorry, Mama, I'm sorry." And she tells Miss Laura that she killed her mom. it takes me out every single time. Now, is there a moment for you in a film or whatever that never fails to make you emotional?
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's scenes from The Color Purple, you know,
Yeah.
when Celie and Nettie are being torn apart, you know, taken away from each
Oh.
other. In the
Mm-hmm.
film in particular, I mean, obviously the stage production as well, but like something about the way that is filmed is just, I
Oh.
can't even every single time. Uh, you know, this is acquired taste maybe, but Set It Off, a film from the 90s, is a film about sisterhood for black women, and they are bank robbers. But they're not just a bunch of bank robbers because they're bad people. They are in the most desperate and destitute of situations that, again, the American dream will put them in, to the point where they have to feel like they need to go do what they feel that they need to go do. And there's a scene where they realize that they are going to get caught, and then that it's going to get very violent, and it gets violent, and it is so heartbreaking to that scene. I cried a lot of scenes. Scenes in Rain Man make me break down and cry. Yeah. Uh, I know why the caged bird sings. That there was a TV version of the Maya Angelou book,
Yeah.
made for I mean, I haven't even watched this since the 80s, but I remember watching it. We had it on VHS tape, and I remember crying at I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, the television made for TV sort of film.
Yeah, yeah. We're here celebrating radical joy, or the conversation is about radical joy. Can you tell me, how does radical joy manifest in the American theater today? And also, I'll give you a part two of this. Is how does it manifest in the American theater? And well, you've already told us how radical joy manifests in your own life. Let's just concentrate on the American theater. How does radical joy manifest itself in the American theater?
I love when writers can write something for two audiences at the same time in the same song or the same experience. And obviously, different people are going to take different things from whatever it is they're watching. But, you know, my experience in, A Strange Loop as an audience member,
Yeah.
my experience watching Slave Play, my
Mm-hmm.
experience watching The Inheritance, which are
Mm.
ultimately, there are my experience. Oh, talk about like the emotion, and then this question that you're asking. My experience watching For Color Girls on Broadway in particular. Uh, I There was very strong moments where we were all on the same page as an audience, and there were very particular moments where I was like, okay, this is for us. I don't know what you're getting watching this sitting next to me, darling, but this is for who it's for. And so
Yeah.
the black
Mm-hmm.
audiences and queer audiences have times where they can sort of get the more the deeper cut in the message that some audiences may not be able to catch. And that is, I experience joy, even if it's a painful story that I'm watching. I love that joy because it feels like I'm experiencing joy. I take joy from that, knowing that we still have a shorthand. We still have a language that we can communicate with each other, even if we're not using slang, or we're not using the Queen's English, but we're still speaking. We can use the same tools that everybody else is using, and speak to multiple audiences at once, and have different people get a different message. And I love that we have the ability to communicate. I won't call it subversively, but it kind of is. I love that we can still do that, because we're probably going to need to do that when they cancel our shows, or when they cancel this, and when they restrict us. If that happens, because it could come, we are still going to be here. So we're going to have to figure out a way to be able to communicate through the mainstream channels in a way that other
Mm-hmm.
people can't pick up. And I'm titillated by that we have
Yeah.
that.
Mhm. Now, can you tell me what was it like being, correct me if I'm incorrect with this. Now, you were the first openly trans person to have a leading role in a Broadway show in Head Over Heels. What was that like for you? How was it like being on that stage for the first time, representing not only representing your community on so many levels? You're a trans woman, you're representing the queer community, you're representing the Black community, but you're also representing yourself. What is that like?
It was, I mean, it was next level. It was, I felt so blessed to have the opportunity to do it. I was, and this was not something that I won't say it fell in my lap. I mean, I did train, I went to, musical theater performance conservatory, and so I remember thinking after college, oh well, I'm never going to use that. And now that, so it finally, at least it paid off. You know what I mean? Like, at least I can check my degree. But uh, it did feel wonderful to be able to have, to hold conversation and bring our community, our greater community, and then also the trans community and different communities and drag entertainers into the light. Because for so long, and it still happens, but for so long, I think a lot of people, especially in the terms of drag, but also in the terms of LGBT people and trans people, the expectation is very, very low. It's like, oh, okay, you're cute, but you can't really. Nobody was really. I can't say no one, but the notion that someone who does drag could also be talented enough to be on a Broadway stage was not something that I think was going through everybody's mind. Now we see that is very different. And so it was an honor for me to have, and the specific official sort of moniker is the first out trans woman to originate a principal role in a Broadway musical. I guess we have to be
That part.
specific because, I do remember going and seeing Justin Vivian Bond on Broadway, who, I think had come out and expressed a few different things after, but still a trans person. I went to go see Kiki and Herb in their Broadway
Mm.
production a couple of years prior. And so, anyway, that is it felt great.
Yeah. Look, it's always important to have someone originate something as opposed to replacing. They're equal as important, but for you to be the first, I mean, it I remember as a kid in Birmingham, Alabama. That's where I'm from. I remember when the touring shows would come in. I was a member of the Ushers Club, so we couldn't afford tickets to a Broadway show, or to a touring show. So I would usher. But the shows that affected me most were when I saw myself. So you don't think about that as a performer. You're just doing your job, but you are in some way connecting with someone. You're affirming them. You're telling them they belong. So a lot of times we don't realize that sometimes we're just being present. We are being advocates. We're being activists. So we're almost at time, but I just wanted to, Peppermint, I just want to say how much I admire you, how much I respect you, and it has been a joy, a radical joy, learning about you. And there are very few people that make me speechless. When I was looking at your IG feed, when I was doing all this research, I was just in awe of how everything that you have wanted or everything that you are, basically the roadmap was always there. You put all the pieces together, as you were saying about your role in Head Over Heels. You had studied to be a performer. You went multiple routes, but you always came back to the best kind of advocacy that anyone can ever do, and that is celebrating your creativity, your authenticity, you. So I am beyond happy to say thank you for this moment in time as we celebrated Pride Month and Juneteenth. So
Oh,
thank you so much for this. Two things I want to do. I want to say to you is I'd love for you to wish everyone a happy Joy Month or happy Black Joy Month. But also the next thing I'd love to do. Have you been to the Whitney or the Met to see either one of those exhibitions?
I went to,
The Amy Sherrill exhibition or
the,
the
I went,
Superfine.
no, last time I was at the Met, I was at watching the Ailey, was that the Met?
Edges of Ailey at yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to invite you to come to either one of them as my guest. I'm consulting at both, but I'd
I would
love for you to
love
come.
that.
And let's
I'll
figure out other.
I'll
Yeah,
fly
let's
with you and I'll have Nolan connect us. And then I would love, are you kidding? Absolutely would love that.
let's
Absolutely. I'm here.
let's let's do that, and let's also find other ways that we can connect and amplify and support you and what you're doing in terms of advocating for humankind.
Mm.
So I appreciate you and thank you for celebrating Juneteenth and Pride with me. This has been a joy and a treat
This is
and an extreme
wonderful.
pleasure. Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you so
so
much.
much. Please make sure you save, ask the people from the account to save it so we can post it, the conversation. If you all decide to do that, I'll share it. Happy
Will do.
Juneteenth. Happy Black Joy Month. Happy, wishing all of the viewers and our entire community, both in and out of the professional American theater, just all of the like you said, that creativity is going to be protection for us as well. I think it's a way to celebrate joy, and it's a way to be an advocate and activist, but it's also will protect us because it helps regenerate. Like joy, I think is it regenerates itself, right? And so thank you so much. This has been a wonderfully joyous conversation,
Yes,
and
it has been.
I'll see you at the museum.
We're going to see each other at the museum. I can't wait. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Peppermint. And thank you for the listening audience. And make sure you come and visit the Museum of Broadway. There's some great storytelling going on here. You know, isn't that right, Peppermint?
That's
Yes,
100% true. And make sure y'all go visit Museum of Broadway. Absolutely.
exactly. Have a great one, guys. Have a good one. Enjoy your day. Bye bye.